You're listening to the Comic Bookster podcast, your source for comics, past, present, and future.
Dragged from what could be any comic shop in the United States to host this incredibly nerdy podcast are some of the most enthusiastic comic book readers ever assembled. They are the Comic Booksters, dedicated to discussing news, speculation, and recommendations for all comic buyers.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Comic Booksters, episode 6. This is Nerdcore, and once again I'm joined by Obi.
Welcome back to Comic Booksters.
And today we're going to be covering 3 topics. It's been kind of a busy week in the comics industry. We're going to cover X-Men Apocalypse, our thoughts about that, as well as the controversial Steve Rogers Captain America #1 and DC Universe Rebirth #1 as well. So let's get cracking with X-Men Apocalypse. What do you got for me, Obi?
It wasn't a bad movie, but it wasn't a great movie. It wasn't what I was hoping for. It let me down, like Batman vs Superman let you down. It was a movie we always go back to every time we talk about movies.
I feel like as a disappointment, Batman vs Superman is kind of the standard bearer, but I'd almost think I'd tell people to see Batman vs Superman over X-Men Apocalypse if they were trying to make a choice, because at least Batman vs Superman was kind of a cultural event. This was 2 icons sharing the screen together for the first time as far as like a major motion picture. But X-Men Apocalypse, man.
It left a sour taste in your mouth?
It did. It did. I did a quick critique on it on my Facebook page, and I described it as 3 okay scenes that elicited no emotional response. At least with me. You may feel differently.
Yeah, I've had a lot of emotional responses in it, but we're coming from different backgrounds going into that movie at the same time. What do you think about Oscar Isaacs?
What a waste of a great actor. I didn't think that Apocalypse was nearly well developed enough. He didn't really resonate to me as much of a threat, and maybe it's just I don't know. It's just I didn't feel as a villain that he had really anything to do. Yeah. And also, that comes to the pacing of the movie. Like when you think about it, that entire movie takes place in a 24-hour span.
Yeah.
And that, no.
I didn't realize, because I'd never looked at the IMDb or anything, never realized that that's who was cast as it. And I haven't known him as anything besides Poe. But knowing him from Poe and then seeing that, I'm like, that can't be the same actor. That can't be. It's impossible.
I mean, when he was laying on the bench in the pyramid. Full spoilers, by the way. We're going there again. You can't listen to this show without spoilers. So, my apologies, but you're in for a ride. He was laying on the bench. You could totally tell it was Oscar Isaac, but he didn't have anything to do. Like, I like my movie villains with a little bit more depth to them, and Apocalypse certainly didn't have it. The same thing, I didn't feel like Olivia Munn had any kind of depth as Psylocke. They got off on the right foot with Angel, but then suddenly, once he loses that cage fight with Nightcrawler in the beginning and becomes an alcoholic, he teams up with Apocalypse, and then nothing. You know, Magneto, of course, is a focal point of the movie, but and maybe this is just me reading the comics, because we talked about this a little bit beforehand, where we haven't really seen Magneto lose his family, like not his parents, but his actual family in the film universe. But I'm so tired of this Magneto. I'm good, now I'm bad, now I'm good, now I'm bad, now I'm good. It's so old with me, and I didn't need it. And then at the end of the movie, he's good. I just feel like the entire thing with this movie was taking us from point A to point A instead of point A to point B. It's cyclical, but then again, what in comics isn't?
That's also true.
Yeah.
The big surprise for me for this movie was Sophia Turner. What's her name?
Yeah.
Yeah, because of watching Game of Thrones, she's bad. I thought she was bad, because I know the show's not written bad. I've watched the show. I've watched the other people act. I thought she was just bad. I was actually surprised that she could show emotion in any form.
Oh, I like Sophia Turner. I, once again, kind of not to my nerd cred, but I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet. You know, I thought that she did it okay as Jean Grey with what little she was given. I just feel like no one was really given anything to work with here.
Yeah, there was. If I want to put it related to anything, it was like the first Avengers movie without all the big action scenes.
Yeah, and like I said, I think what resonated with me honestly the most were the scenes that did have action, because I really enjoyed that first Quicksilver sequence. I was so bored in the lead up to it, though. I'm sorry, I just couldn't get into it. Nothing was catching me. Nothing was keeping me in the film. We hit that sequence. That was cool, but let's be honest. We've seen it before.
Right, yeah. They can't keep doing this trope. It's literally a trope at this point, because not only do they do it there, they do it in a second part in the movie where he slows time down like that. And I feel like that whole Xavier School blowing up would have felt more meaningful if he wasn't there. Like, he arrived late.
Yeah.
Or only could save half a wing, say.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're just blow this school up again.
And that's the thing. Like, well, they haven't done that before. They haven't blown up Xavier's school in these movies. This is the first time we saw it, but it's actually the fact that they use Quicksilver to save everyone. It takes the impact out of it. The only casualty in that was Havoc.
Well, are we calling all of the X-Men movies, or just these 3 X-Men movies? Because in X-Men 3, part of that school gets demolished.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, don't go watch it.
I'm not going to go back and watch it. My gosh, if I want to watch parts of X-Men 3, I'll use the stuff that they cut into Deadpool and reuse the footage for.
Yeah, no, when they go to try to pick up all the kids from the school, I watched it like 3 months ago for whatever reason. And when they go to pick up the kids from school, they break all the windows and break the doors down and do all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that was an X-Men 2. That was when Stryker assaulted, but he didn't blow up the school. They just crashed in through it. They assaulted it, but they didn't blow it up.
No, but they do it in that movie, and they do it in 3 also, which is
maybe I've just blocked X-Men 3 from my mind.
It's so bad.
I feel like, this definitely would have had a lot more impact if there was a higher body count. And I mean, every nameless student that you ever see in that school got saved, and Havoc's the one who bit the dust. But I don't know. It didn't really, like I said, just no emotional resonance with me whatsoever.
What did you think of Jubilee?
Oh, yeah, she was in that movie, wasn't she?
Yeah, it had like 2 lines.
2 lines, and they made such a big deal about it, and that she was looking like her counterpart and everything. And that's the thing with these movies at this point, especially with it. Like, I feel we've moved beyond where X-Men is as far as comic book and superhero movies go. We've gotten pretty much comic accurate looking versions of the characters in most of these franchises. We finally got it with Batman and Batman vs. Superman. That was one of the things that film did right. We actually got kind of a more comic book-esque feel to Batman's uniform. We've gotten it with the Avengers characters. We've gotten it now. I mean, Spider-Man, since his inception on film, has had, with the exception of the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, had pretty accurate costume. But the X-Men still, you don't get the actual X-Men costumes, like even something that actually feels familiar to them, until the very end of this movie. And it's still just the drab, black, like I'm so tired of it. But this film, even in the trailers, is like, oh, here's a flash of the actual costumes. And it's at the very end of the movie. And, maybe we'll get it from Bryan Singer's next X-Men movie, 90s in Space, but I don't want that movie, honestly. I'm sorry, I love Bryan Singer as a filmmaker. Usual Suspects is one of my favorite films ever, and he directed that, but I just don't want another Bryan Singer X-Men movie, because I feel the longer that he stays with it, it's just going to hold the X-Men back, and I feel like there is a very, very strong possibility to have a great X-Men movie that embraces what the X-Men is, but I don't think he's the guy to do it.
Oh, absolutely not. They definitely don't want to run to Zack Snyder.
Oh, no, definitely not.
I don't know who could tell an X-Men story from the comics and film. You could let Smith write the movie and have someone else direct it.
About Joss Whedon. I know you're not a fan of the first Avengers movie, and I don't think you didn't really like the second one either, did you?
I like the second one more than the
You
first
like
one.
the second one more than the first one, and actually, that's true of me. We're in the minority there, but I honestly, having seen his run on Astonishing X-Men, which is one of my favorite X-Men runs of all time, I would really like to see Joss Whedon get behind the camera on an X-Men movie and actually have the X-Men be what they are, because that was a big thing about his run, which it came right on the heels of Grant Morris's run, which I also love, but he kind of took the X-Men in a little bit of a different direction that was honestly a little closer to the movies, but also had that really weird Morrison flair and still embraced their history. But he brought the X-Men back to the whole kind of superheroics thing, is what Whedon did. And I think that that's kind of what this film series needs at this point.
I do want X-Men in space, though.
Yeah, well, it's kind of it's an X-Men trope at this point in the comics, and one that hasn't been touched on in the films, and that would be nice. I don't want to see this retreaded ground.
I really want to see Scott's dad as a space pirate.
Yeah, but we already know Scott's dad isn't a space pirate. We already know that Scott's dad's an old man in a house in some random state. I don't think it's Alaska. It should be Alaska, but it didn't look like Alaska. But we saw him in this film. Yeah. Looks nothing like a space pirate. Oh, you let me down, Bryan and Simon. Simon Kinberg, who wrote all these movies. I just, throw a dog a bone here, man.
I really want a space pirate.
And now, all these movies this year have been about consequences, right? Like, Batman vs. Superman was built off the consequences of the Battle of Metropolis with Zod and whatnot, and how the world reacted to Superman, and he needs to be put in check. And Civil War is all about putting the Avengers in check after New York, which was, in retrospect, not their fault, because if the Avengers weren't there, the government was going to nuke the city anyway.
Right.
And Sokovia, really
they get blamed for dropping it, but it wasn't them that dropped it.
Yeah, but it was, I feel like the big thing with Civil War is Tony Stark's the guy who needs to be put in check. Because a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened if not for Tony.
He voluntarily put himself in check, so he knew that he was an issue.
Yeah, but then he needed to project that onto everyone else. But anyway, all these films are dealing with consequence. Let's talk about the consequences of X-Men Apocalypse, because I'm sorry, the entire world suffered more destruction in that movie than it did in Man of Steel, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Batman vs. Superman, Winter Soldier, and Civil War itself. People were dead, the entire world was practically destroyed, and yet we still get at the end people in a war room going, I think this is the miracle we were looking for. Like, what is going on?
I don't know. Yeah, there was way more destruction in this movie than any of the other movies. That's for sure. I don't know. Singer needs to go. I can't disagree with that.
If people feared mutants at the end of Days of Future Past, they're terrified. Everyone should have a pitchfork at the end of this one. Like, this is... I don't get it anymore. Like, there's so many plot holes in this. And here's another thing. At the end of Days of Future Past, they drag Wolverine out of the Potomac.
Yeah.
And it shows that he's going into Stryker's custody, but we get a flash of yellow eyes on Stryker's, which reveals that it's not Stryker, it's Mystique. And we get to this movie, and Wolverine's in Stryker's hands, and Mystique's doing something else. What happened with that, too?
Well, she might have been still pissed off about the whole thing that happened.
I don't care. It's just a big plot hole to me. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense.
Oh.
Nothing makes sense. But it did give us one of the coolest scenes of the movie, number 2 of my 3, which was Wolverine's Weapon X rampage done right, even though most of it's off screen.
Oh, but the helmet.
The helmet was great. And you certainly didn't have that in X-Men Origins Wolverine, which was another film that I've mostly blocked.
And then you weren't there for the end credit after the after credit scene.
I couldn't do it anymore, man. I couldn't. I needed to get out.
So basically, they set up that it's gonna be X-23 and Mr. Sinister.
Nice. And I'm assuming this just makes me think from what you've told me. And I did manage to catch a glimpse of the end credit scene online. This just tells me that what this upcoming Wolverine movie is going to be is a mix of Old Man Logan and Death of Wolverine. I'm pretty sure they're killing him off at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, they kind of were hinting at that's what they were doing, that X-23 was going to be taking over the mantle, which I'm cool with. I have no problem with the female Wolverine.
But I mean, if they're working back up to like this classic X-Men lineup, which they've been obviously trying to build in this film, I honestly think that they kind of missed the perfect opportunity to recast Wolverine with this sequence.
True.
And Hugh could have still made his Wolverine 3 and been an older version of the character, but they could have brought in a younger version of the character to keep it going, since they're already recast Cyclops and Jean Grey, and they're signed to multiple picture deals.
I mean, with Singer, if he's still there, he might cast a male and not make X-23.
No, he said that he wanted to pitch a female Wolverine, so we're getting it, because I have no doubts that Bryan Singer is going to be making the next X-Men movie.
I still think it's going to go to Marvel within the next year or two, but...
No, well, I don't know.
It's having a bad weekend.
Well, it's top in the box office, but it's not making nearly the amount of money as some other stuff.
It's actually making less from the first 2 days, the Thursday night and the Friday night. It made less money than First Class did.
Oh,
in
ouch.
the first 2 days, and that's including the bump up for having the 3D. I read a whole article about it. It actually is projected to make less money than X-Men 3 did on opening weekend. And that was 10 years ago where tickets were less.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think it deserves it. I definitely think you told me that it was grossing less than First Class. I think First Class is a better movie.
Well, First Class is a way superior movie. And I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm still surprised. I mean, I guess it's still going up against Civil War, and there's people that are going to see it every week.
Civil War blows that movie out of the water.
Yeah, but I still want to go see it again for some weird reason. But I saw X-Men Origins Wolverine twice in theaters, so...
I will never forgive you for that. But
I never forgive myself for that. But, to my credit, I fell asleep the second time at the Deadpool part.
I'll give this to X-Men Origins Wolverine. Movie was awful, but it gave us an amazing Wolverine game.
That is also true.
So... there you go. The one bit of credit that I'll give to X-Men Origins Wolverine. And that's even, you still have to do that really crappy version of Deadpool fight in that game, but still it's a great Wolverine game, and that's the only credit I will ever give to X-Men Origins Wolverine as a film, is that it actually had something that spun off of it that was kind of cool. All right. One last thing actually on my end with this is that the third thing that I thought was really cool was the end fight scene. However, I thought that was cool strictly for the visuals. This movie did nothing to establish the stakes for me. I didn't really care what was going on. Like, I looked at it and I said, this looks cool, but I just couldn't care less about what the outcome was, because it was just mutants fighting mutants, and there didn't really seem to be any kind of cause behind it aside from that weak Apocalypse, the strongest may survive, that they couldn't make me care about because they didn't properly develop Apocalypse's character anyhow.
What about the Phoenix?
It's going to be interesting, and since he wants to do X-Men in space, maybe we're going to find out the Phoenix is actually a cosmic force like in the comics, but I didn't care. I didn't care. Like, it looked cool. I didn't care.
When he was talking to Jean, when she has that nightmare scene, and he's like, you haven't hurt anyone yet? I wanted to be like, yeah, except for when the Phoenix comes out and you destroy a planet, you kill a whole entire planet.
Yeah, but she hasn't done that yet.
But she saw the end of the world in that dream sequence, and I'm like, not like she hasn't destroyed a planet in the comics.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on from X-Men Apocalypse, and we are going to move on now to things we've been reading this week, and I had to convince Obi to read Steve Rogers' Captain America because there's a lot of controversy, and I feel like we should probably cover it at least a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm picking up issue 2.
I hope you don't. I hope you don't.
No
one should.
The twist, I had problems with it when I first heard it. My initial reaction was, just that this is blasphemous. But I think back, and full spoilers for Steve Rogers' Captain America #1 follow, but I think back to Avengers Standoff, the big crossover they had with all the supervillains being controlled in Pleasant Hill as normal citizens by a sentient cosmic cube named Kobik, and that's what was used to bring Steve back to his young super soldier form. And when this happened, the Red Skull was in close proximity. I'm pretty sure he still has a piece of Xavier's brain sewn in, and I'm thinking maybe the Skull planted some ideas in Kobik to rewrite Steve's history, making him an agent of Hydra, as writer Nick Spencer and editor Tom Brevoort say he is and always has been, which pretty much spits in the face of every Captain America fan I can think of.
I think it's just another retcon that they'll fix it.
Yep.
Like I said, like we were talking about the other day, because Marvel just announced that they're going to be doing the Marvel Now thing again in November. Remember when they did that?
Yeah, yeah. Those books sold really well, and then they relaunched them into all new Marvel Now, and then those books sold really well because apparently you can't sell comics unless you're relaunching them constantly.
Well, those number ones. Those number ones, because everyone's like, oh, I got that number one. This will be worth money someday.
And it won't be.
Yeah, because look at all those like people that bought every cover of like Spider-Man or all of the Death of Superman variant covers. They're not worth nothing.
Comics as a collecting field has kind of lost its way. You're looking for printings instead of just number ones. But that being said, that's neither here or there. What did you think of issue 1 of Captain America, or Steve Rogers' Captain America?
I felt like I was reading a pile of sludge that my feet were stuck in and I couldn't get out.
You know, I often complain that it takes me 3 minutes to read through a comic book these days, when I used to be able to get a complete story in, say, 20 pages, and now everything's so decompressed. It took me like 45 minutes to read through this issue, and I didn't enjoy myself at all. Like, even before the big reveal, it just crawled and crawled, and that's worse because I'm not getting a complete story in that time frame. This is decompression at its worst.
This book is just a hot mess. Either they were really strapped for writing time, like they pitched this to the writer like 2 months ago, and he was like, I guess I can throw something together. No,
I think Spencer's come out and he said that Rick Remender, back when he was writing Captain America, had a story about Hydra having infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was going to be a big witch hunt and whatnot. But then he had the idea based on that story that the person who would do the most damage, having be a sleeper Hydra agent, would be Captain America himself.
I'm going to say issue 7, it changes.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to pick up issue 2. I was thinking about sticking around till issue 6, but if they all read like this one, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm not going to be able to stick it out.
This book is just unnecessarily wordy because it tells you nothing in all of the story. You know what I mean? It's just bad. That's one of the worst issues I've ever read.
And that's not because of the twist. It's just because of how it's written.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm sorry to Nick Spencer. I've never read anything from you before, but if you write comics like that, I don't think I would ever want to read anything from you.
Well, let's talk about something we both enjoyed this week. To kind of close things out, let's talk about, and this is revisiting topics from our first episode, which you can still go back to and listen to on Podbean, Stitcher, and iTunes. DC Universe Rebirth #1.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So, how cool is it that Wally West is back? And they had an actual explanation for why there's 2 of him.
I like the explanation for why there's 2 of them. I have my fears of too many speedsters. You know this.
Yeah, but it's Wally, and I think he's going to primarily be in the Titans book.
Yeah, that's the only thing, because it's Wally. I'm like, okay, it's Kid Flash. It's cool.
I'm really curious as to what he's going to be called from here on out, because obviously new Wally is going to be Kid Flash. Barry's the Flash. I don't know. He was being the Flash while Barry was the Flash when Barry first came back from the dead during Final Crisis, but I don't think they're going to go that route this time.
The big thing about this book, for me, was the Dr. Manhattan being in it but not being in it.
Yeah. His presence is definitely felt, though, and you understand that he's responsible for everything that's happened.
Yeah, I really liked the setup when he... that whole first part where you think it's Wally talking, because it's the same color word bubbles, but it's not. That initial whole first part is Dr. Manhattan taking apart a watch.
I don't think it is, though, because honestly, that might be Dr. Manhattan taking apart the watch, but the word bubbles, I think, definitely belong to Wally at the very least, because they're in his color of the yellow backgrounds with the print. But I do think, because when you get later into the issue and you do actually have Dr. Manhattan's word bubbles, they're in that light blue shading.
I don't know. I thought I still have I'm 50-50 on that, because I think they change it when he comes out of the Speed Force. Oh yeah, by the way, spoilers.
Yeah, well, we've already yelled spoilers so many times, I think we're finally safe now. But stuff that resonated with you in this issue, you like the Dr. Manhattan reveal, obviously, which I think is really cool. I know some people are going to be upset because, oh, you can't put the Watchmen in the DC universe. Oh, Alan Moore wouldn't like this. Honestly, I think it's kind of genius because Watchmen ushered in the whole grim and gritty era of comics that has, really influenced everything from 1986 up to present day. And the fact that they're going to try and make a brighter, more optimistic DC universe and put him at odds with the actual thing that, aside from Dark Knight, had started this entire grim and gritty trend that comics has been on. I think that's kind of brilliant. I think it gives us an opportunity for some great new stories.
I really just want to see Batman and Rorschach team up.
I don't think you're going to see Batman and Rorschach team up. I think Rorschach's dead.
Shh. They brought back Wally West. They can bring back Rorschach.
I kind of really liked also the parallels of Pandora's death with Rorschach's death that were just done in this book. From the panel layout on.
When we were talking about, what do you call himself? Mr. Oz?
Mr. Oz, yes.
I was wondering, do you think it's Osmodeus?
It could very well be. It's weird because you can see his face, but it's really hard to make it out.
Yeah, that's why when I initially saw that, I was like, I think it's Osmodeus.
Yeah, I think that if it is Ozymandias, that's going to be kind of cool to see what he's doing because, when I first thought about this, and I had this spoiled for me a few days ago, but I kind of thought, okay, so Dr. Manhattan's toying with the DC Universe makes sense because at the end of Watchmen, he leaves to go create some life, which maybe he stole 10 years' time to try and help create another universe, but whatever, I'm sure we'll find this out within the next 2 years that the story runs. But, the implications of him maybe bringing someone with him like Adrian Veidt is kind of interesting. Does he think that he needs Veidt to maybe help him? Does Veidt maybe have second thoughts about what Dr. Manhattan's doing and is trying to help? Guess we'll find out if Mr. Oz even is Ozymandias.
I think he might be.
Yeah. I think it's a distinct possibility.
So who do you think's going to be back from that? Do you think Rorschach's dead?
I think Rorschach's dead. I think if we're going to see anybody based on what we've been given, I think we'll see Dr. Manhattan. Ozymandias is quite possible given the person who was talking to Clark Kent. Or Clark White as he's currently known. I think with the comedian's button turning up, we could possibly see Silk Spectre brought in, and by extension you might get Night Owl as well, but I think everyone else is going to be to the wayside, which is frankly Rorschach. And comedian I don't think you're going to see either.
I think he'll be back.
Okay, so you're holding out hope that all of them are going to be back pretty much.
I hope so, but I have such high regards for Watchmen.
Oh, me too. It's one of my favorite books.
It's probably my favorite book. Like, as a graphic novel, or if, like, short run story, whatever, however you want to call it. I don't even know if I can put anything else close to it. Like I said, when we were doing New Frontier, when there was parts where it felt very Watchmen-y.
Right. Other things from Rebirth that maybe resonated with you. I'll tell you, with me, because Wally's going through the timeline, trying to connect with different people in the New 52 universe to get them to remember the previous universe and therefore draw himself back into existence. One of the people that he reaches out to is Linda Park, and she doesn't remember him, and it is perhaps the most heart-wrenching scene I have read in a comic book in quite some time.
Oh, for me, definitely the Green Arrow and Black Canary staring at each other, longing for each other. Like, why do I think I recognize them? But they can't put two and two together. Then you see that their end of that page, they both have a separate panel while they're just awake in the middle of the night just thinking.
Yeah.
And then for sure the Aquaman and Mera thing on the beach.
Which I like that because it leads directly into that Linda Park sequence too, because of the marriage proposal. Wally realizes who he needs to reach out to and is actually able to locate Mera because of that.
Yeah, that was a really good scene.
Coming out of Rebirth, any changes to what you're looking forward to as opposed to what we spoke about in our first episode?
I might want to read Aquaman.
Fair enough.
I like when he's married to Mera. He's like a normal Aquaman, if that makes sense.
It kind of does. I'm already reading plenty of stuff for Rebirth already, so I think I'm still set on my books. But if you have not checked out DC Universe Rebirth #1, please go out and do so. Even if you're a Marvel guy, I mean, this is definitely changing the tone for the DC books. and I think everyone should at least give it a shot.
Yeah, but what tone is it going to bring?
I'm hoping it's a little bit more brighter, a little bit more optimistic, because since for the past 5 years, it's been kind of a downer. There have been great stories in the past 5 years, don't get me wrong. 0 Year, Court of Owls, The Trench. I enjoyed Grant Morrison's run on Superman immensely. I really enjoyed Flash and Wonder Woman and Lemire's run on Green Arrow. But I need a little hope at this point. I'm not going to lie. Things are getting dark, and it's not just in comics, it's in the real world. And honestly, I read comics as a form of escapism. We've said this before. I'd like a little hope.
Do you think Dr. Manhattan's going to bring a little hope?
Jeff Johns has gone on record and said that he's an antagonist in this story. Not a villain, but an antagonist. So I feel like he's letting his world bleed over, and this is the DC Universe kind of reacting back. So, as they said, he didn't steal just 10 years. He stole love. So let's see what a little love and a little hope brings to the DC Universe. It's been a little too long.
And then let's talk about the ring on the table at the police station. Legion of Superheroes?
The Legion flight ring, yeah. I think that's Saturn Girl that they're talking to. I think she came back in time to enlist Superman's help, or at least ensure that he's on the right path to make sure that all will be well. She says she's seen the future, everything's going to be all right, so she's very confident about it.
I'm so looking forward to those number ones coming out. Definitely because Green Arrow number 1 comes out next Wednesday, so I'm all over that.
And I believe Batman does too, so I'm on that like no one's business.
Is that the only 2 that come out next week?
I'm not sure. I'll have to check the checklist at some point, but I know, the two of the books that we're most excited about hit next week. So
there's one other book that came out this week, but neither of us read it. That Future Quest came out this week.
Yeah, it did. I wanted to pick that up today, but it wasn't at my shop. I also wanted to pick up Civil War 2, and that also was not at my shop. They had sold out of both of them. So I'm just going to see if I can get this.
They sold out of Future Quest.
Yeah.
That's actually a surprise.
I'm going to see if they can get me in copies of those, and maybe we can cover those here an episode or 2 down the line.
Because I did not think that book was going to do well for DC.
No. You'd be surprised how many people love those old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
I know, but some of them are really hard to watch.
Yeah. I don't know. I love Johnny Quest. I love Space Ghost, Galaxy Trio, the Herculoids. Like, I'm into all those because when Cartoon Network first came on when I was a kid, I was there at the inception when it came on as an actual network. Those cartoons were just awesome.
I'll never remember Space Ghost from Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
You're a couple years younger than me, so.
That was awesome. I don't know if you ever watched that.
I did watch Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
That was amazing. No, Johnny Quest was on after school, but when it was Johnny Quest when I got home, and then that was when they had started Toonami. So that I had Dragon Ball Z, Sailor Moon, that stuff.
All right, and I believe that's going to do it for this episode of the Comic Booksters. If you like this, be sure to go ahead and subscribe. And we will catch you next time.
This episode's going to blow up in 5 seconds. Just give it 4 more episodes.
Thanks again for tuning into the Comic Bookster podcast. We would love to hear from you with feedback and suggestions. You can send those to us by email at thecomicbooksters@gmail.com or on Twitter @comicbooksters. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. So long, everybody.